Hello, welcome back to the Maya Toolbelt. This is Michael. We're still continuing with our police light project. So I did a test render and it came out okay, but I did notice some problems. Let me show you what it looked like. And let me set this to repeat and hit play. Okay, so if you notice on the left side, the lights seem like they're rotating in a pretty good clip, but on the right side, they have that stutter, right? But otherwise, I think it looks pretty good. It's predominantly red. Hopefully it's not an issue. I'll obviously need to run that by my technical guy and see what he thinks. And then also the bottom of it down here, which you can't really see when I move my mouse like that. Let's see, go back to, okay. So the bottom of the police bar is overly dark, so I need to fix that too. Might lighten that up a little bit. The yellow lights in those little two panels on both sides, I think I'll maybe animate them flashing also, so they're not just steady. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with the end result. Especially for, like I said, this is a free kind of volunteer kind of little project, and I think it should look good for what it is. So to first fix that animation issue, I need to, let's hide my layer for my shell thing. If I select the group, you see is rotate Y is keyframed, and if I go to Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. So what's the difference is, so I have this one selected, you see it's like a curve to this animation curve. If I select this group over here, it's a straight line. So that's why whenever the animation ends over here and restarts, it just flows very smoothly, while over here it has this kind of hump to it, so it comes to a stop essentially and then starts again. So in order to fix this, I'm going to select all three of these and press up to get all three groups. Select the curve, and this button here, this looks like a straight line with a dot on the end. It will straighten that line, and so now when the animation plays, it plays smoothly and doesn't have that stutter anymore. So that's good. Put that back on. So as for the overly dark look to it, let me go to my render view and hit play to get that started and change to my render cam. Okay, so there's the bottom side down there. So yeah, it's a little dark. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll just make a new light for it. So I'll select this light and duplicate it, and it's going to run a little slow because it's trying to update the render as I do this. And I'm going to, come on, have this one pointing up like this, and I'll reposition it. So it's hitting the light right through here. So you definitely can see it lighting up now through there. But I don't want it to be too bright though, so I'm going to go to the attributes for this light, and let's take the exposure for this down. Let's see, 4, 5, 6. I just don't want it to be too black. So as long as we can see something, which I think this looks better, and we're running 3 samples for all these lights, so they're not the lights should not be contributing to any noise that we're getting for the most part. Okay, so that looks okay. And then let's see, anything really obvious I want to do to this before I go on. I think I'm gonna close that for now. So the last thing I want to do is I'm going to have these little lights inside here kind of flash. So to do that, I'm going to hide Control H to hide those panels so I can get to them. So open those lights up, and we're going to go to, let's see, we can keyframe their intensity. Did we go up and down? Or their exposure. Right now the exposure is 8 for both of these. If we keyframe the exposure up and down, that might work just as well. I guess it doesn't really matter. So I also would like them to kind of flash sequentially, so they're not flashing together at the same time, but this one flashes and that one flashes and so on, back and forth. And this is a 1-second clip, so I don't want it to be too frequent in that 1 second. It's going to repeat on the screen. So 1001, so 1 second. So it could be like one's on at the beginning and the other one is on in the middle, and they flash that way. So at frame 1 here, I'm going to, let's use exposure. I'm going to right click on exposure and says set key. And at frame 30, I'll have set key again. And then at the halfway point, I'll put the exposure down to 0 and set key. And then for this one, I'm going to do the opposite, so that where it is right now at 15 with exposure set to 8, I'll set key there. And then at 1 and 0, at 1 and 30, the exposure will be 0. So set key there, take it to 0 again, set key there. So what we should see happening then is the light exposure goes from 0 to 8 to 0 again. Okay, so I'm going to grab both of these lights and go back to my graph editor, Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. You can see the curves here. So I'm going to select these curves and make them linear like I did before, so it's going to go on, off, on, off, on, off like this, and not have like curvy and not be too gradiently. So it's going to flash and then kind of turn off relatively quickly. I think that's how it should work anyway. Won't really know for sure until I render it. But with them, let's see, at frame 1 then what we should see is one light is on and the other one's off. So let's go back to our render view. Actually, Control Shift H to bring back my panels because they were gone. And let's hit play again. So whenever one of them's exposure goes to 0 though, you can see that I had copied that blue light material for the light itself. I might need to fix that. Let's just render this little section here. Yeah, it's kind of noticeable. So let's fix that real quick. And so we'll do that. We can, my Arnold render does tend to go slow. Hide that and grab this. So it's using the blue light material. And we don't want to change the blue light because we're using that for the other ones. So what I need to do instead is to either assign a different material or make a new one. So select the faces and we're going to right click, assign existing, and we can use, let's see, how about we use, well, if we use that yellow glass panel, it's going to be semi-transparent. So let's just, we might need to make this new one. Let's see, assign, actually what we can do while I'm thinking about it. So we want another light bulb texture essentially. So I'm going to go back to my outliner here and find my list of materials. Here we go. So blue light is what they currently have. Sorry if my microphone is making noise this whole time. It's rubbing against my collar. Okay, so the blue light is what we've been having. So I'm going to Control D to duplicate this material. So now I have blue light 1. And let's change this to just yellow light, I guess. Yellow light. So then the emission, change that blue color to a yellow color. And then we'll apply this. So we'll select these faces, right click, assign existing, since I copied that one, and now we have yellow light. So I applied that now to those faces, and we'll do the same over here. They'll both have the yellow light. So I select the face, I'm going to grow the selection twice. And I know it's not 100% accurate, but it's going to be so small it's not going to matter. At least I think. And assign existing yellow light. Okay. By the way, in case you're wondering how I'm getting the materials and stuff to show up in my outliner, what I'm doing is going to display and unchecking the DAG objects only. If DAG objects only is selected, it's only displaying like geometry and groups and things like it normal, like lights and stuff. But if you go to DAG objects only and uncheck that, it'll display your materials and all sorts of other stuff in here that you probably never will even touch. But I mostly was looking for my materials because they are listed in here. So you can see them there, blue light, blue plastic, chrome, clear plastic, and so on. So it's really easy to get to them here instead of having to go to like the hypershade. Looks like I have a physical sky left over from when I was experimenting with that. We can delete that, I know that for sure. And we can go back to this if we wanted to. Okay. Control Shift H, bring back my yellow panels. And let's just see what that looks like now. So now at least it's a yellow bulb, and we can decrease that yellowness if we want it to be more of a white color. So lowering that exposure for the light definitely dimmed this light down quite a bit so we can actually see inside here. We might even lower the exposure. Instead of going to 0, we could make it go to like 2 or something, just so it's significantly less bright than that one. Let's do that. I'm going to hit stop here so it's not running through my CPU. And hide this again, Control H. So I'm going to grab this one, and right now it's at 0 exposure. Let's change that to 2, and then set key, and go to frame 30. Change that to 2, and set key. Let me do the same for this one, and that frame 15, instead of it being 0, 2, set key. And just to make sure, I'm going to select them both, go back to my graph editor, make sure it's still linear, which it is. Cool. Okay, let's see what that looks like now. Control Shift H to bring back my panels. And let's just grab this, hit play. Oh, we're at frame 15. Let's go to frame 1. There we go. So this is exposure of 2, so it's still pretty, actually, you can still kind of see inside there. But it still has some brightness to it, so it's not going down to 0. It's going down to 2. So I think that's going to be significant enough of a change between these two. You can see it over here with the highest exposure of 8 with the light on the right. And this is at 2, so it's going to go flash back and forth that way. Okay, I think that should be fine. So anything else I want to do before I do a final render pass? Any of my AOV layers, my render passes that aren't doing anything, just because I wasn't really sure what all I would need, I can delete them. So diffuse indirect's not doing anything, so diffuse indirect down here, I can click here and say remove, so that takes that off. Albedo, that's not really helping me any, except for it could give me a mask effect, but I don't think I need that for this project, so I'm going to remove that one also. Diffuse direct, sure. Emission, indirect. Indirect diffuse is not doing anything, so we'll remove that one. Let's see. Specular, yeah. Specular albedo is not doing anything. A lot of these, again, I'm not, like I said, I'm not the expert in rendering because of my game industry experience did not really give me much experience with that. So I'm still learning a lot about which render passes we actually want. Specular indirect. Okay. Transmission albedo, that's not really doing much. Let's remove that one. Transmission direct, not doing anything. Remove that one. And transmission indirect, okay. So now we have diffuse direct, emission, which both of these are not really doing much, but we'll go ahead and keep them. Indirect. How is that different from transmission indirect? Not much difference between indirect. There's a little bit of a difference. I think I can get rid of one of these. Let's get rid of transmission indirect. It doesn't seem like that's really doing much for us. Different, at least not compared to what the indirect itself is doing. And then we have specular, and this is both specular layers together. We have specular direct and then specular indirect. Although the direct seems to be overlaying over the indirect because you don't really see all these little flashes, these little sparks through here in the combine. Oh, I guess you do. They're just very subtle. All right, these different passes, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to use them or not, but I wanted to show them to you in case you know, and the purpose of that is you can render these different passes and take them into a compositing program and change their different levels and things if you wanted to. All right, so I think I'm ready to render. So let's go ahead and close that and we'll save it. I did do a render before, which you can see all these passes that I've saved here. I'm going to actually just delete all of these because I'm going to redo it. Hit delete, get rid of all that stuff. So now I'm going to go to the rendering menus under the render menu. Now normally we'd batch render like with typical Maya software rendering, but for rendering those render passes, we want to do render sequence. So go render sequence options. Current camera is going to be the render cam. Let's see, alternate output. We don't want to alternate output file because we're using the location. Let's see if we go back to the render settings. What we should see, go to common. Okay, so it's under going into my CDT or Christmas Dessert Theater folder, the images folder, which is that's what we want. And okay, so then we can say render sequence. And so what it's going to do, there we go, you can see it rendering. Now this is a test render. I don't have the full resolution yet, but this is just a small test render. And what it's going to do, the Arnold render view or the Arnold renderer will start rendering each frame. And you can actually, unlike the batch render, you can actually see it rendering right here. And it's going to do this for a while now. So it's going to start rendering this, and it's going to go start at frame 1 and render it, and then save it, and then go to frame 2. You'll see it actually, this will actually tick over to frame 2, and then render. There it goes. Now it's at frame 2. There we go. Now we're rendering again, and it's going to keep doing that. If I go back to my images folder now, you see now I have all these different folders for all my render passes. And so my beauty folder has my first frame, which is the EXR file. And if I go to Photoshop and images, beauty, police light 001, my first frame, hit open. Say okay, okay, and there's my first frame. So, and once I have all that, I'm going to take it into this program. This is a, this is called Natron or Natron. I don't know how you actually pronounce it. Natron, N-A-T-R-O-N, or Natron. And this is a free open source kind of compositing program. And so this is my original render. You can see when I hit play, I'm getting that stutter over here. This is my original frames, and I've actually deleted those frames, so it's still kind of saving that in here. But anyway, it's a node-based system, pretty much like the Hypershade is, and I have my frames here, and they're being plugged into the viewer, which is what shows me what this is. And then here is a write node, or a render node, if you want to call it that, but it's called write 1. I have the source is these frames going into write 1, and then I'm saving that out as MP4. And then you hit render, this render button. So once this new sequence renders, maybe I'll show you how I did it in here. This is again Natron, this free open source kind of compositing image sequencer thing. So again, I'm not a huge expert in compositing. A lot of this stuff is gibberish to me, but I'm learning. I'm figuring it out. So again, my apologies if my microphone's been making noise this whole time. I just noticed it's kind of rubbing against things. All right, anyway, so this is rendering, and as for now, I'm kind of done while I'm waiting for this. So I will talk to you guys later.